Okay, so let's do just like a little video about the delivery of this little cutie pie. So my appointment was scheduled on March 27th for just like my regular checkup. And went in, and my last 2 or 3 appointments, my blood pressure was slightly elevated. It wasn't like extremely concerning, but it was higher than what my doctor had liked. So we have been watching that. I had to go in for monitoring after my first appointment where it was higher and sit on the little belly monitor for, I don't know, I was there for like an hour and a half probably, and my blood pressure went down, was fine. Then that following Monday, I had to go in for another blood pressure check, and I didn't see my normal doctor that day. She was out of the office, but that doctor said that it was fine. It was within like normal range. So she was like, no concerns, I'll let your doctor know and we'll go from there. Okay. So then the following week from that would have been the 27th, if I believe. Yes, the 27th. So my brother ended up coming with me to that appointment. And he stayed in the car. I ran in because it was supposed to be just a quick appointment. As you know, sometimes they check you, sometimes they don't. All depends on what you want. It's just a quick, hey, how you doing? And you're in and out. So my appointment took longer because my blood pressure was high again. And my doctor had said, because I have had repeatedly high blood pressures at my last X amount of appointments, and my last blood pressure check with the other doctor was just under what they considered high, she's like, I think that you need to be induced. And I was like, okay, like when? And she's like tonight. And I was like, excuse me, tonight you want me to come back for an induction? And she's like, yeah, at this point, I just don't see a point in keeping you pregnant. She's like, with hypertension and all of that stuff, like, there's no need to risk it. She's like, you're at the point now where, so Friday, my appointment was Friday. I turned 40 weeks on that Monday. So I basically like full term. She's like, there's no harm in inducing you now, and it could cause harm if we don't induce you now, like with having that high blood pressure. I was like, oh, okay. So I started crying because that is the last thing I wanted, was to be induced. So she obviously like gave me Kleenex and she talked to me about it. She explained to me what was going to happen. She knew I did not want an induction. She knew I didn't want Pitocin. She knew I didn't want, try not to have an epidural, things like that. So she was completely understanding, obviously, from my point of view. And she explained everything. She's like, you don't need to rush in to the doctor. She's like, you can go home, get ready, take a shower, do whatever you want to do, and then just come in later. And I was like, okay, that's good. I said, because my husband is working 2 hours away right now. So it's going to be a little bit before I get into the hospital for this induction. And she goes, that's totally fine. She's like, do you have an idea of like when you think you would get there? And I said, well, typically he doesn't get home from work until like 7:30. I said, but I'll call him and I'll tell him he needs to leave early. I said, but I can't say exactly when he's able to leave. Like if he's in the middle of doing something, he won't be able to just like drop it and leave. And if you're saying it's not like a rush kind of thing, then obviously he'll finish what he needs to get done and then leave. And she's like, oh, okay, that sounds fine. Like whatever, go get some lunch, like get yourself ready and just come back. I'll call the hospital where you're delivering and let them know that you will be coming in for an induction tonight, but it will be several hours before you get there. And I said, okay, cool. I got to the car by my brother. I was holding tears back the entire time on my way out, as I was trying to text my husband and my mom and let them know what was going on, but trying to keep it together because I'm walking in public in the clinic, and I didn't want people thinking, you know, like staring and like thinking the worst. So I kept it together until I got to the car, and then I got to the car and I just completely broke down, started bawling my eyes out. And I don't really cry. So my brother was completely like confused and was like, what's wrong? Like, what's going on? And I told him, I said, I have to have this baby. And he goes, well, didn't you know that? He's like, you knew this time was coming. He's like, so what's wrong with that? And I said, yeah, I knew it was coming, but I said, they're making it happen. I said, it's not, they're making the baby come. I said, that's not what I wanted. And he goes, oh. And he's 21 years old, so he doesn't know what to say. And he was like, well, it'll be okay. And I was like, yeah, I know. And he goes, so what are we doing? And I was like, well, she told me we don't need to rush. I said, so we can go still to the mall and we'll get your, he wanted to get a scope for his gun. So we went to the mall, went to Shields, did that. And then we went over to Chick-fil-A because I was hungry, and I was like, I knew I would have to eat something prior to my appointment or prior to my induction. I called the clinic back and I was like, is there anything like I can or can't eat before I head in tonight? And she's like, nope, eat whatever you want, whatever you're comfortable with. Go ahead and get whatever you want. And I said, okay. In the back of my mind, I kept thinking, Mom said, don't eat anything like crazy spicy, anything like with a lot of like flavor to it, like avoid pizza and pasta and like garlicky things or, you know, stuff like that, just in case you do get sick. And she had told me that prior to like the whole induction thing. She's like, just when you're getting closer and closer to your due date, I ate more bland. Because she's like, I was terrified of getting sick and having to throw that up and then having all of that come back up. So we were extra careful with where we chose to eat. My brother did not care. He's like, I'll go wherever you want to go. So we went to Chick-fil-A, and I just got, I got their nuggets and mac and cheese. So we ate inside Chick-fil-A, and then we went home. We did stop and get a car wash before we went home because my car was filthy, and that gives me such anxiety. Like any type of event that we have, I need to have a clean car on the outside. Funeral, wedding, apparently having a baby, anything like that, I like to have a clean car for. It just helps keep me like calm, I guess. So we ran through the car wash quick. Then we went home. I dropped him off, came here, and I took a shower. I sobbed. I had a complete panic attack, meltdown situation. I was texting Grant and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I can't do this. I was like, my chest hurts so bad. Like I literally think I'm having a heart attack. And he's finishing up at work and trying to drive home, and it all ended up being okay. So I took a shower, and the shower helped me calm down a lot. And then by the time that Grant got home, he took a shower, and we got everything loaded up. We got back to the clinic, the hospital, and we got there by like 7 o'clock. So by probably, I don't know, 7:30, 7:45-ish, after you get like all of your, like the IV hooked up and like your enrollment type thing, like they get all of your information, all that kind of stuff. And she started me on miso. I don't know, that's short for some sort of drug. She started me on that, and they were like literally the size of like a grain of rice. So like this pill must have been really, really small, and then she like quartered it, and she gave me 2 quarters at a time. So, and you just put it in your cheek and let the pill dissolve. So I got 3 doses, I think Grant and I both remember. It could have been 4, but I know it wasn't more than 4 doses of this miso. And her shift changes at 6 a.m. Okay, so with the miso, everything was fine, didn't really feel anything. She said that I had been having contractions since I came in. I couldn't feel a thing. I had no idea I was having contractions. And then even with the miso, she's like, do you feel the contraction you're having right now? And I was like, no. She's like, okay. And then she kept monitoring it, and she goes, this one's a little bit bigger. Do you feel this one? And I said, no. And so I was like, okay, I guess this is good. Like, I'm not feeling these, like, because my goal still was to not have an epidural. And I told the nurse that, and I was like, that is one thing that I'm actually terrified of. And Pitocin is something that really scares me. And she's like, I completely understand. And I was like, just everybody says their contractions with Pitocin are absolutely horrible. And I said, I will accept an epidural if it gets to that point where I just can't handle it, if I have to start Pitocin. And she's like, okay, like, good to know, blah, blah, blah. So we did that. She was super, super helpful. She got me a peanut ball. She got me like the regular big like yoga ball, whatever, like the normal one. And she was helping me change positions. She was helping me like try to like be as comfortable as possible. Because I did eventually start to feel them, but they were never like anything crazy. I just was able to like take a deep breath, and I closed my eyes. And the thing that I kept doing was I tapped my fingers. I either did this or I tapped my fingers on the bed, and I kept rhythm with that. And I just kept breathing, and I counted in my head, and my eyes were closed, and I just kept tapping. And something with the tapping, it just kept me calm. So, and I think the counting helped too, because I knew like, okay, you breathe in for 4 and out for 6 is what I did. And that seemed to really help, counting in and counting out, and then you could feel it release. And that was fine. And then she came in and she goes, do you want the regular ball? And I said, yeah, I'd like to try to sit. And I went and I sat in like the fetal position for a little bit too. Because that to me has always been a comforting position for me to be in. Even like growing up in middle school or high school, like I would sleep sometimes in the fetal position. So I sat like that for a little bit too. And then that got to be too uncomfortable. And she brought in that other ball. And that helped. And I just rocked back and forth kind of like this, did like the hip motion. And I'd do like slight little bounces on the ball. And that was really it. I didn't do too much like back and forth, like pelvic rocks like that. It was mostly side to side. And then I was leaning forward on the bed, and same thing, kept tapping my fingers on the bed, or I tapped them on my head like that. And for some reason it worked. So her shift changes at 6 a.m. and she wanted to check me before she left so she could tell the new shift. And I was like, okay, yeah, like I'm curious, like is this even doing anything? Is this miso doing anything? Because now they're getting more intense. I need to know where I'm at. I need to know, like, am I getting close to active labor? Like, where are we? Like, am I gonna need an epidural? Like, I need to try to figure out when I should ask for one before it's too late, like if they're gonna start Pitocin. And she kept saying, she's like, we're not gonna start Pitocin yet. She's like, I just wanna see where you're at and then go from there, and they might start it at that point. And I said, okay. So she checked me, and I was like 4 or 5 centimeters. She's like, okay, this is good. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I was like, yeah, I guess. I was like, okay, we're getting closer, but like still, we got a long ways to go. And even my doctor said when I saw her earlier that day, she's like, I fully anticipate this being at least 24 hours. Don't expect this to be anything fast. Just because at that point I was only like 1.5 when she saw me. And that hadn't changed for the last probably 2-3 weeks that I had seen her. So that first nurse left, and the two nurses came in for the AM shift, and one was like a trainee, like in school, whatever nurses do. Like they were both, all of the nurses that we had the entire time that we were in the hospital were absolutely fantastic. But these two specifically were just amazing. So they came in, they started talking to me, they were explaining things. This is when it started to get way more intense, and I was like, okay. After they came in, they like introduced themselves, they talked to me, whatever, let me know where things were. Then they let me sit for a little bit, and then they came back, and then the like student girl tried to check me because I told Grant, I was like, you need to go get those girls. I said, something more seriously is happening. And I said, I think my body is trying to push. And he's like, oh, okay. And I was like, yeah. So he stepped out of the room because we were right across from the nurse's station. So it was perfect. And he stepped out of the room. He goes, could one of you come in here and check her again? She thinks that something like it's more intense, and she thinks that maybe she's trying to push. And they're like, oh, okay. So they came in, the student tried to check me first to see where I was at. And she goes, oh my God. She's like, I think you're at a 9. And I was like, excuse me, what? And she goes, yeah. She's like, I couldn't quite tell. She's like, because I started to have another contraction. She's like, I couldn't quite tell. So then the other nurse checked me and she goes, yeah, you're like ready. And I was like, holy balls. Okay. So they're like, we're going to call Dr. Schmidt, let her know where you're at, and have her make her way in because she was on call this weekend, or this last weekend, I guess. And so they called her and they're like, if you have the urge to push, I know it's really hard not to, but try not to. And I was like, you're telling the girl who is in active labor to try not to push? Okay. So I tried not to, but if you have delivered a baby without an epidural, it's really hard to not push because you feel it, and I tried my hardest not to like actually push, but I had to do something. So I was just very gently like trying to, and like slowly move the baby out kind of situation. So I went back into the fetal position for a little bit because I wanted to get off the ball. I was like, I'm not having this baby sitting on the side of the bed on this freaking ball. So I got back up on the bed and I sat in the fetal position for a little bit. And then I don't think I ever laid back down on my back. Maybe I tried to lay on my side. I don't even remember. But Dr. Schmidt got there and she goes, okay, we're having a baby. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, how do you want to push? And I was like, I don't know, but what I'm doing right now is not comfortable. I said, I need to move. And they're like, okay, how do you want to go? They're like, you're ready to go. Like Dr. Schmidt, she looked at me, she checked, she goes, yeah, you're fully like ready to go. And I was like, okay. So I was like, can we try squatting? And I said, I feel like I need to squat. And they're like, yeah, totally, absolutely. Do you want to squat like facing backwards, or do you want to squat facing forwards with the squat? Like, how do you want to do it? I said, I don't freaking know. I was like, maybe get the squat bar. So then they got the squat bar, they dropped the foot of the bed so I could sit kind of like this on the back of the bed. And then when it was time to push, there was a bar this way in front of me, and I just held myself up on that, and then used obviously my legs like I was doing a deep squat, and pushed that way. And that is how I delivered him. So they said I pushed, they told me in the hospital that I only pushed for 18 minutes. But on a piece of paper, it said my labor was a total of like an hour 20 or hour 40, something like that. And then it said /26. So I'm like, are they saying I pushed for 26 minutes and my total labor was an hour or whatever? I don't know. So when I go back, I think I might, like he has his appointment on Friday. So I think I might ask the nurse or his doctor what their note says so I can understand that a little bit more, because I'm very curious if it was, I mean, either way, only pushing 18 to 26 minutes is extremely fast. And the girls that came in, so it was the two girls that started after shift change that were in there, Dr. Schmidt, and then another nurse came in to help, and I don't know, she must have been like Dr. Schmidt's like assistant type thing. And the other two girls were there to kind of help me and coach me. And they were all fantastic. My husband was standing on like the back side of me, and he was controlling the fan because I was hot. My legs were on fire, like from squatting. It was insane, but it went so fast. And the way that they were all coaching me and telling me how to push and how to breathe, and just like having those girls in there really, really helped. My husband could have said something too. I honestly don't know, because they were talking so loudly. And that is like what I focused on, was what they were saying to me. Grant 100% could have said something to me. He could have touched my back. He could have done something, but I was not associating with him at all. And I kind of feel bad about it, but I totally disassociated myself from everything. And I focused on pushing and listening to the one nurse count. She goes, "Do you want me to count for you when you push?" And I said, "Yeah, let's try that." So she did, and doing that helped absolutely 1,000,000%, because when I work out, I'll count in my head too. So listening to counting, or counting my breath, or whatever it may be, helps me so much. So 18 to maybe 26 minutes later, baby came. Everybody was like, "That was freaking amazing." They're like, "This is why I love this type of delivery." Like one of the nurses said, they're like, "This is fantastic. That was awesome. You did such a good job." Like they were so impressed, because it was my first baby and how quick everything had happened, because Dr. Schmidt, like I said, was expecting it to be all of 24 hours. And that's what I was anticipating too, because that's what she said. So I was like, I don't know. But yeah, so they cleaned him up a little bit, and I laid back down on the bed, like I scooted myself back, laid back down on the bed. They put him up on my chest, and they gave me 2 warm blankets because I kept shaking. It wasn't like some of the videos that I've seen of women shaking after delivery. It's like aggressively shaking. I just was like tense shaking. Probably because of obviously all of the adrenaline, but also because I just did like a full freaking workout, and I haven't like I worked out during pregnancy too, which I think seriously helped a lot, and doing a lot of stretching, but my legs were what was shaking probably the most, from just not being used like that in such a long time. So they put them on me. They put the 2 warm blankets, and the 2 warm blankets helped so much. And then they added a quilt, and all of that was fine. Then Dr. Schmidt started working on the afterbirth. Let me tell you what, I told her straight up. I said, "I am straight up not having a good time." I said, "This freaking hurts." And she goes, "I know, I'm so sorry." She goes, "But you're doing good." She's like, "It's coming along, blah, blah, blah." And this was after like cord was cut, obviously. Like it had to have been at least 30, 45 minutes after she started working on getting everything out. And time literally flew so fast. She told me that they waited to cut the cord for 3 minutes. It felt like 30 seconds. And it was insane. So it had to be all of at least 30, 45 minutes before she started working on the afterbirth. And it was absolutely way more painful than delivering him. I will stand by that statement for the rest of my life. I said to her too, I said, "I would much rather have him again than do whatever you're doing right now. It freaking sucks." So obviously I had to push, get that out, and then they do their massages. The massages are freaking horrible. My stomach is still tender, but it's not nearly as tender as what it was, obviously. But man, oh man, does it hurt. That was way worse than anything I had ever felt during this entire labor process. Hand to God. People might not believe me, but it was way worse than delivering him. So let's see. Did all of that, cleaned me up. She did, I think, one stitch. She said just tore a very little bit, and I was like, okay, that's good, because that was like the first thing I asked her. I was like, did I tear? She goes, I don't know, I haven't quite looked yet. She's like, let me get everything cleaned up and then I'll let you know. And I was like, okay. And the lidocaine also, I felt that was very uncomfortable when she had a numb to do the stitch. That was uncomfy. And then I could feel one part where she put the stitch in towards the end. And I was like, yep, that I can feel. And she just didn't say anything because she was almost done. I could tell she was like sewing and like tying the knot. And I didn't say anything. Like, I just was like, you know what? F it. It's fine. Just freaking do it. I'm not, just be done, basically, is what I was like. I didn't say that, but like, that's what I told myself in my head. And, so we finished all of that. They let me sit in the recovery, or in that room, for a while before we moved to the recovery room. And obviously you have to get up, go to the bathroom, do all that stuff before you move to the recovery room. Well, when I went to stand up, I got super, super lightheaded. And they asked me, they're like, when's the last time you ate? And I was like 1:30, and I had Chick-fil-A. I said, other than that, I haven't really eaten anything. I said, I did have a cookie here, and that was it. And they're like, okay, let me get you some food. So they went and they got me food. They got me a whole variety of options. I ended up eating it all. And then the first nurse that I had made me like the mommy mocktail thing. And that was really good. I said, so I did have that. So I do have some sugars in my system. I just don't have any food. And then, let's see. I finally was able to stand up without feeling dizzy and not having to put my head between my legs. And they wheeled me into the bathroom because I was like, it wasn't more than 10 feet away. And I was like, I'm just not comfortable walking to the bathroom. I said, I can go to the bathroom, but I don't want to walk there. I was like, just in case. So I stood up and it was fine. Turned around, got into my little wheelchair, and they wheeled me into the bathroom. I got up, went to the toilet, everything just fine. They helped walk me through on how to like rinse and all of the fun stuff. And they turned on the water to help me try to go to the bathroom because I did not have to pee. Like, out of all of the water in that mommy mocktail, everything that I slammed, still didn't have to go to the bathroom. So I sat there for a while. And if you're pregnant, pee with your legs wide and lean as far forward as you can after you have your baby. That was a tip that I got, and it is the biggest thing that helped me. I literally like laid on my thighs the first day of going to the bathroom. I also had a slight tear by my pee hole. I don't know how that happened, but whatever. So it stung a little bit, but it wasn't like bad. But doing that helped me tremendously. And then they helped me like spray down and like showed me how to do it, all that stuff. And then went back, they wrapped up baby. They took all of his measurements, his weight and all of that stuff in that room. Then they wrapped him up and we went over to the other side of the labor and delivery into the recovery room. The recovery room was nice. It was big. It felt more like homey than like sterile where I delivered, which was nice. I had nice big windows in both rooms, actually. The bed in the recovery room was probably like a 1.5 size bed, something like that. Because Grant and I both slept in it and it was totally fine. Like, we both had plenty of room for the both of us to lay, and then like obviously we had him and stuff in there, and it was fine. And it was nice that he was able to sleep in the bed as well instead of trying to sleep on the couch. But yeah, we had him then 7:40 that Saturday morning. After we were there at 7 o'clock, like I said, they probably started me on that meso at 7:30, 7:45 roughly. So like 12 hours later, and I had a baby, which is insane. And then, so that was Saturday. We didn't leave until Monday. They give you 2 nights. So technically, yeah, Saturday was because he was born Saturday morning. That was our first night. We were going to go home Sunday when Dr. Schmidt came in and she talked to me. She goes, I think you're doing just fine. If you want to go home, you can go home and they can get all of his testing and stuff done today and they have no concerns, then you can go home. And I was like, oh, okay, great. So that was our plan. And then their hearing machine, the screening machine was broken. So we had to wait for that. And then they couldn't get him circumcised until late Sunday night. So we had to wait for that, and that was fine. So one more night, we're like, whatever. One more night for the nurses to help at night, and we can relax and sleep and, you know, try to get some sleep. And then, yeah, went home Monday. Monday was an absolutely gorgeous day, and we came home and we sat outside in the sun for a little bit. He was not in the sun. He was in his car seat with the little sun cover up, but we sat outside in the sun, and it felt so good. But, yeah. It was overall a very, very good experience considering I was absolutely terrified of it. And I can only pray that for my next baby, it goes just as well. And they did say too, they're like, if you plan on having another baby, just be prepared for it to go this fast, if not even faster. And I was like, okay. So, which I mean is good, I guess, but I'll just have to keep that in the back of my mind. Definitely we want another one, but obviously we're 11 days in and not even close to ready for another. We're still figuring this out. So, but yeah, that's the story. And it was overall a really great experience. And honestly, I give it all to the nurses and my doctor. Like, they were fantastic. Obviously Grant too, like he's been amazing, but the nurses, it truly, truly matters on who your hospital team is and who you have in that delivery room. Makes a huge difference. But yeah, I guess if you guys have any questions or, you know, anything else, just let me know. I'm definitely willing to share whatever. And yeah, but he's here and he's doing well and I'm doing well, and yeah, happy it's here and over.